I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up, then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest knows what it takes to build from the ground up and leave a lasting impact. Tom Bright brings over 20 years of B2B sales experience across the UK and US, helping scaling businesses turn their sales engines into profitable, repeatable growth machines. From navigating fast-moving uncertainty to building resilient sales strategies, he's seen and solved it all. As founder and director of Bright Evolve, Tom now partners with companies as a fractional leader, strategist, and coach, delivering hands-on guidance without the cost of a full-time hire. Known for his direct, practical approach and deep belief in human connection, he cuts through the noise to focus on what truly moves the needle. A builder, strategist, and coach, Tom lives by the idea of leaving a legacy. Tom, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast with your hosts, me and Lex. We're super excited, Tom, to have you on the show. We just listened to your bio. Unbelievable background experience. I can't wait to hear all about your story. But how you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm in a very miserable UK, so I'm wishing for sunnier climates right now.
Well, I'm up in New York, as you know, and it's quite ugly here weather-wise. We all are always jealous of Lexi and her sunny posts on LinkedIn. She just posted today about her golfing. I mean, geez, I think we're very jealous of your Florida lifestyle, but very cool to have you on the show, Tom.
Yeah, I need to be in Florida, I think.
All right, let's do our phase 2 podcast. We'll do how's it been going since our last show? We'll do it in office in Florida. How's that sound?
Count me in. I am in for that 100%.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'd love to start with your origin story, right? Because like me and like many I've met over the years, it's very rare where I'll ever hear someone say, yeah, I went to college for sales and I have a degree in sales or my master in sales. We kind of fall into this industry, right? So walk me through your beginning. Walk me through like where did it really start and how did you get that real taste for B2B sales and what made it hard for you to get into it, if at all?
Yeah, so I didn't go to university for various kind of personal reasons. That didn't happen. So I was in retail, and I was like really hating my life. So I went traveling and I went to Australia. I was in Australia for 6 months and I lived with 2 guys for a period of that time, both whom had worked in sales. And I mean, they were just like funding all of our kind of events in Australia, basically. They were the ones getting the drinks in. I was like, oh, okay, you guys are making serious money. So I just literally picked their brain for some time. And look, as 19 years old, trying to kind of forge my way in the world. For me, it was definitely kind of go and get whatever sales job I could do, kind of doing B2B sales, basically. And it was really hard because I didn't have a degree, didn't have experience behind me. I remember kind of interviews where people would say, you're too young. How do you even know what you want? I was like, well, I'm not exactly left with a load of choices, so let me go. So, and then thankfully somebody gave me a chance, in a pretty big business. I mean, paid me absolute peanuts, um, but gave me the kind of chance to get in there and learn some stuff and kind of prove myself basically.
Awesome. And you've been in sales for, like you mentioned, a really long time. What's a lesson from your early days that still shapes how you approach sales today?
So it was definitely back then, it was definitely hard work beats everything, right? That was like something I knew kind of, if you really wanted to kind of be one of the top performers, a great individual contributor, you had to really work hard. You had to really kind of dedicate yourself to it. And I still think that stands not just in sales, but in loads of walks of life. And I think the kind of constant that hasn't changed, regardless of kind of technology and advances in that space, is all about kind of relationships and human connection. I think that's kind of been really key to everything I've ever done in sales, whether that's connections with clients or whether that's connections with the teams I'm running or my stakeholders across the company. You cannot you cannot beat the power of human connection and building relationships. So yeah, I think that still stands true and long may it continue.
So I have a thing called IQ in sales, and it's not intelligence IQ, it's I quit factor, right? So when you do something hard, like you mentioned, especially in those early days in sales, you have to really understand that I quit factor because so many do quit, right? So many, especially in anything that's difficult, the reason why we say it's difficult is a lot of people don't do it. So walk us through that time or maybe a couple times where you thought to yourself, maybe this isn't for me. And you pushed through and you went through those hard things and persevered.
Yeah, I think look, that's always been the case. I think it's always been the case when I was in a permanent career before I kind of started my own thing, and you're always thinking about what's that next role basically, and you're kind of left with this kind of daunting factor of, oh my god, I have to start again. Like I've got to kind of, I've built up my kind of reputation, my billings, all this kind of stuff. I've now got to do that all from the ground zero. And at that time, you think, God, it'd be easier to just go and be, kind of like a landscape gardener or something, which would not have, I'd have to do that. But every time I just kind of work back through what's that process. I've done it before. I can do it again. Let's kind of get through that and trust that process, basically. So there's constantly times when it's hard, and I think you have to just be able to really hold on to the reason and the kind of purpose of why you're doing this and what you're trying to achieve, basically.
Yeah, really like that. And just diving in a little bit deeper, what do you think the biggest misconception people have about building a career in sales?
Um, I mean, look, now I work with a lot of kind of founders who didn't necessarily think about building a career and they didn't even think about sales. So I actually hear a lot of those kind of preconceptions of people. I think a lot of people just think, there's a load of people out there just to make money, and, not necessarily do the right thing. Um, and actually, I think in all the businesses I've ever worked with, the highest performers, the best individual contributors, yeah, they've kind of been motivated by, commercial success, but they've also actually been motivated by doing right by the company, doing right by the clients, understanding that kind of notion, basically. So I think that's definitely a key thing. I have had people before think that it's a lot easier than it is. Um, you see some of these kind of bigger brands and people are kind of achieving great sales, and oh, that must be really straight. They must see that must be really straightforward, but they don't see all the hard work that goes in behind the scenes, basically, and the effort and the kind of process and the sleepless nights.
So I got a question for you, and then I got a follow up. So let's talk about those founders that you work with, right?
Mhm.
There's founders that I say are salespeople, and then there's founders that are more like engineers and product guys, right? The Steve and Steve, like Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs is a great example, right? So when you're working with the founder, let's say, who is not the salesperson, how do you really dive in and peel back the onion and get them capable? Or do you believe you should not focus on that and build a sales function around them?
Yeah, I think look, when we're starting to work with businesses, typically they've had some level of commercial success, right? They've kind of proven their product or their service offering is feasible commercially in some way, basically. So what we'll really look to do is kind of just get them to forget the word sales and actually hone in on what did you do that worked well in that instance. Who was it? Typically kind of like through a relationship, they were able to demonstrate why their product could solve a problem. So we just try and kind of get rid of this illusion of forget the word sales and actually just talk about how does your product or service offering solve a problem for that customer. And we're kind of really working with them on that. What we're often doing is we're working with our those kind of founders who are product guys, engineers, developers, whatever they might be, to say, right, what do you need around you to actually help you do the bit of the sales process that you're really good at, right? You know, nobody's ever going to quite sell the product like you because it's your brainchild, it's your baby. But where do you need support in terms of your growth function, your marketing, your outbound sales, et cetera, et cetera? And let's work with you to build a strategy that just elevates you to do what you do really well. And then I think the key thing is then we're looking at, okay, now let's capture what you do really well and use that to build a playbook for sales so that we can bring others into the business and teach them what you've done really well. So there's a kind of really staged process you have to go through. But yeah, just trying to kind of break away all the kind of magical sales stuff that they might think exists and just get it down to basics is really important.
Perfect. So that's teased me up for my follow-up. Now that you have this function around them and it's commercialized, what are those biggest challenges going back to our theme of do hard things about scaling it, right? So a lot of companies are trying to scale it, they're trying to push, and it feels like there's that glass ceiling. Where are they typically going wrong when it comes to taking it to the next level and scaling that function?
I think we try and work with all our clients. So through my consultancy, when we're working with businesses, we try and work with them through a kind of three-stage process, basically. And it's get profitable, then get repeatable, and then get scalable. And too often, I think what's happening is people are going to try and jump straight to scale without really testing. Have we got a repeatable sales process, a repeatable kind of solution that we know can sell time and time again to a particular market segment or whatever that kind of might look like? So we really focus a lot of our effort is on how do we do this repeatable time and time and time again? Because that way you can slot somebody in with the right playbook and the right support about them, and if they, got a bit of experience and the right kind of like levels of intelligence and everything else, they should be able to kind of run with that basically. A lot of the businesses I work with, they're too quick to jump into, oh, I need to hire a salesperson without kind of building those foundations in place. The other thing I'd say, just working with founders, is getting them to get out of their own way. By their very nature, a founder brings an ego and a level of confidence, but actually kind of getting them to take a step backwards and go, yeah, we can bring others in to actually help kind of build this business with me, is often quite a key step to work through with people.
Awesome. And in addition to the traditional sales playbook, we love content, love seeing all the content out there in sales. And you're also big on LinkedIn. And some of the things I love about your content is the Tom's Top Tips content and huge about human connection is so important in sales. Why do you think content is so important today to do the sales role?
I mean, first off, thank goodness I have the name Tom, because otherwise that alliteration would just not work as well. Uh, I so I mean, actually content is something I was never that kind of into until I was running my own thing, basically. And I've always kind of been a big believer of educating people through the sales process and through kind of marketing activity. And actually that's kind of why I started doing the kind of Tom's Top Tips and the content like that. It's just purely educational, basically. And what it does, I think and I hope, is if anybody's then kind of seeing my profile, recommending me to somebody else, it demonstrates that I like to think I know what I'm on about, and have, some kind of good ideas around how I can help others and based on my kind of 20 plus years experience, basically. So that's the kind of purpose of that content. It's much like the sales effort, basically. You've got to be really strict on doing it and working hard and being really, kind of rigorous on putting that content out there. Because yeah, it's not. I don't love it, but I put it out there and then I never watch them back, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, I was on 3 sales calls last week, one with a chief marketing officer who said, "No one's reading my emails and email is dead." And then one with a CRO that says, "No one's picking up the phone, phone calling is dead." And then another one with a branding person and say, "Hey, you know what? LinkedIn, no, everyone's pitch slapping and LinkedIn is dead." So there's all of these, people saying things are dead. Like you call it shiny object syndrome, right? Like walk us through this phrase you've coined, which I absolutely love. And how do you stop avoiding that? I mean, I guess what's the antidote, right? What is actually working and how do you, find that out and double down on it?
Yeah, I think shiny object syndrome is something I've seen like with founders, especially, right? Especially if they don't come from a sales background. they will go on LinkedIn or they'll be on Instagram. They'll see someone say, "Hey, you," and we all see those posts out there. Usually they're trying to sell you something, but they're basically saying, "Hey, you've got to be doing this, right?" And I get founders call me up going, "Why are we doing this?" I'm like, "Why are we doing what? What? That's not even a thing." So I really the first thing I would do with all of our clients is always work with what's the process? What are we trying to sell? What problems are we solving? Who are we selling that to? I'm a big believer in still like a multi-channel approach, basically, right? Yes, for some people, email is dead, but I still get success with emails across my clients. Same with LinkedIn, same with content, same with phone calls. I mean, same with getting out to events, et cetera, et cetera. You need all of them working, basically. And if you're confident you've got all of that working and you've followed that process to get all that implemented, if you then call me and say, "Hey, we need to be doing carrier pigeon because that's the new thing," okay, maybe I'll listen to you because we're trying everything else, but don't try and do that without everything else in place.
Okay.
I also don't advocate carrier pigeons as a sales tactic. I just make that really clear.
You haven't implemented that yet?
I feel like I might get lost out of town if I
I
suggest
could
that.
see you in your backyard just having 1,000 carrier pigeons.
Yeah.
This is the new way.
The Bright Evolve Carrier Pigeon Brigade, yeah.
That would be great content too, like you next to all
So good. And you launched Bright Evolve to be the sales ally for businesses. What gap were you really seeing that made you think, I need to build this and it's going to be successful?
Um, I then didn't see the gap. I had a hunch. I've always worked with kind of early stage businesses. That's all I've ever done. I'm not your man that's ever kind of been gone into a kind of big corporate business. I was a sales director for an ed tech business and we'd grown. We'd had fantastic growth. We were like 300 plus people. It was all really exciting, but I was just really bored. And I realized that what I really like is I really like the hustle of the early stage businesses. And I really like kind of the intellectual challenge of solving their growth problem. So I kind of worked on this assumption that there are founders out there who don't know sales, commercial growth. They don't know how to kind of take their business from, A to B and how to kind of achieve that kind of growth that I've seen through my career and learned from the hard way. So kind of went out with this kind of notion of, hey, we'll be your sales ally, we'll help you on that journey. And thankfully, 3 years later, it's definitely kind of proven to be true that there are businesses out there that need that sort of support. And for us, it's get in, help you deliver, help you set up, and then get out so that you can run ahead and build the business, basically.
I love it. So this fractional model is becoming more and more popular, right? There's so many fractional leaders in all different types of niches, which we absolutely love, and it's really working for many companies. What kind of business, though, is it the right approach for? And where do you see that ideal alignment happen when you're dealing with a fractional leader coming in?
I think for us, we've really focused in working with organizations, not kind of saying that fractional is your end goal, but it's a really great piece for you to use, test out some resource, whether that's marketing resource or sales resource or fractional CRO, which is often the role that I'm kind of performing. Um, Actually, kind of use us to help you build something and get it in place, but set the foundations up and the structure up for your full time permanent resource that needs to eventually come. I think there are some businesses who they want to access some really great talent. They want to kind of bring in senior people, but they can't afford them and actually often nor do they need them on a kind of full-time permanent basis yet. So for me, I think the role of a fractional has to be focused on legacy still and has to be focused on building something that somebody else can come in and pick up. Because if we don't do that, we end up in a world where there's just a load of fractionals running around and just sticking with businesses for years and years. There's got to be an end point in mind. So we'll always kind of go, right, what is that end point? How do we help you get there? What do we need to put in place? Because, we're senior enough and experienced enough to come and help you kind of do that and set those foundations up, basically.
Totally. And so many people, like you mentioned, like the idea of the fractional role. What do you think the hardest part about actually being fractional is, and how do you make the impact that you do without being there full time at a company?
I think there's questions in part. I think the hardest bit is definitely there's twofold to that. There's one, finding your work and keeping that kind of regular stream of work. You do have to kind of treat that as a full-time job as well often. There's also the piece where it can be quite lonely, right? You've got to you're out there as your own. You're not part of a big team and part of a kind of business. I mean, there are more and more businesses cropping up, and we're doing some of this where you're kind of capturing teams of fractional people, which I think helps that. So I think that's really important. I think in terms of kind of how you make that impact as a fractional, I think it is that point about having a real plan in place. Be really careful about not just getting sucked into just the business as usual and just the day to day. There is an element of that, especially if you're in a kind of leadership role, but you also have to be enacting and implementing kind of strategy and process improvements and getting that business in a place that it's better by the time you left it.
So you work with UK markets and US markets. Yep. We do as well. We see a lot of differences. We see a lot of similarities. What do you see as a different about how sales is being approached and done on each side of the pond?
I think, I mean, there are definite differences. I think the US, well, first off, the US are kind of much more open to the fractional model, so that's kind of really great that that kind of works so well for us. I think actually the US, it's easier to have conversations with people in the US than it is in the UK. I think there's this kind of like just kind of British thing where people, if they don't want to talk to you, will just ignore you. Whereas at least on the US, you can in the US, I find 9 times out of 10, as long as you've got a kind of decent proposition, you can have a conversation. What's really important though is getting out honestly quite early. Is this of value or not, basically? Because otherwise, I find conversations just tend to roll on, roll on. Whereas in the UK, like I say, people just won't even talk to you. So I think that's a kind of big thing. I think I'm definitely seeing more and more use of kind of digital automation, kind of outbound agencies in the US than the UK. The UK is catching up to that, but it's definitely a kind of bit behind the US in that regard.
Awesome. And you've built a career, you're running your own business, you're advising, coaching others. Why do you keep showing up and what's driving you right now?
I really love what I do now. This is, like I said, I've always kind of worked for others until I kind of started Bright Evolve, and I've always loved that. I've always been really passionate those first 9, 12 months of a gig, and a permanent role, setting everything up, building that. And now I get to do that time and time again. I also really love working with founders. I do a lot of work with kind of young founders here in the UK where we kind of do some work kind of pro bono. And actually, do you know what? If that paid the bills, I love that because you just see the kind of light up in their eyes of, hey, we've helped, really build something for them. So actually, kind of whenever I get to do that with founders and actually we make some money from it, it's a bonus. So yeah, I really love working with founders because you're just helping to bring their dream true, those early stage businesses, helping to put those things in place. So yeah, for me, it's I'm doing all the things I really enjoy doing and have enjoyed doing all my career as a business now.
So let's double down on that because I am like you. I get so excited seeing founders who want to scale and grow their business. And like you, we are successful enough to pick and choose who we get to work with without being, arrogant and a jerk about it.
Yeah.
But end of the day, I get excited and I get passionate about working with a cool product or team of people who are truly passionate about their product and service. So, what are some of the questions that you're asking in those discovery calls with founders to really understand and unpack if this is truly a client that you want to spend your time with?
Yeah, I'm really understanding a few things. One, I'm really understanding how much clarity do they have on the problem they're solving and the business problem they're solving. Two, have they thought about how that's going to make money? Because often I get a lot of conversations with people who are like, "Yeah, I've got this great idea," and it does. It sounds great, and it sounds like they're trying to really do something meaningful. But I can't see how it's going to make the sort of money they're thinking. Right? So, we really want to try branch it into that. And then I am kind of just talking about, what's their goal with this? Where do they want to take this? Is this something that they want to kind of use to build out a huge kind of business around them? Do they want to exit? Is it a lifestyle business? And really, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for businesses who are solving a real problem, can definitely have a path to kind of commercial success, and are building something which is going to benefit the greater economy, society, not just kind of running it as a general lifestyle business. I'm really looking for people who can, yeah, work with founders who can help to kind of grow something really meaningful.
And you get to work with founders who are young, give them advice. But if you could go back and give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice about sales, career, life, what would it be?
Um, I mean, let's not do what would I say 20-year-old to me on a life basis. I'm not sure we've got enough time on this recording for that. I what would I say? I think for me, actually, I would be telling my 20-year-old self to make the leap sooner to do your own thing. I hung around for far too long in kind of permanent work. So I was like, hey, I've got, mortgages to pay or mortgage paying, kids to feed and all that kind of stuff. There was always a reason basically. Whereas actually once you make the leap and, you push yourself out there, I think there's some really exciting things to learn about yourself and opportunities to uncover. So yeah, if I was saying anything to my 20-year-old self, I would be saying, one day you'll have a beard and you should also get out and do your own thing sooner.
I love that. So you have quoted a Maya Angelou quote in your bio, which I absolutely love. And by the way, for all of those who don't know it, if you're going to live, leave a legacy. It's a bold statement, right? So what does leaving a legacy look like for you in the context of your business?
I think I'd really like to get to a place where, when I'm no longer on this world, there are people that look back and say, hey, Bright Evolve really helped us achieve what we wanted to achieve, and build what we want to do, and that's kind of at the heart of everything I do. And that's both the people that work for us in the business, that's our clients. Yeah, it's anyone we kind of interact with. Because let's be honest, if you're not going to do that, what's the point?
Totally. And it's so glad that you get to have that moment with your clients. And for the founders, sales leaders, and reps listening right now, might feel stuck, overwhelmed. What's one hard thing they should go do this week that could change everything for them, at least be a step in the right direction?
I think what I would say actually is probably go away and actually think about, right, if I was going to run a business, if I'm a kind of sales rep, if I'm going to make a change in my life, what might that look like? What might the most revolutionary move look like for me? And then figure out, right, how much of that is possible. But really try and be kind of quite revolutionary in that thinking. Take all the kind of preconceptions that we have of what is possible and what's not, and then kind of take that away. I mean, the other key thing I would say is find somebody that you can lean on to talk to and throw that idea around with. There is so much power in having mentors and other people that you can lean on to throw those ideas around with.
Awesome, Tom. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. My final question to you is, who is that ideal person that you would like to chat with? Who is your prospect or ideal founder or leader that you would like to connect with? And what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah. So I would love to connect with leaders of businesses that are probably founders that are kind of really looking to grow, but maybe not quite sure on what the next step is and how we do that. I'd also really be open to talking to sales leaders that are maybe thinking about entering the kind of fractional space and might want to kind of look at working with us as an associate. The best place to get me is on LinkedIn, or I'm at tom@brightevolve.net.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for joining the show. We appreciate it. And from everyone in the show listening, we appreciate you as well. Keep doing the hard things. And Lexi and I will see you on the next one.